I'm joined now by Bobby Kotick, former CEO of Activision Blizzard, now focused on a number of philanthropic ventures. Bobby, AI is a huge topic here in Sun Valley, and all of your not-for-profit work kind of comes back to this idea of AI and how AI can be used as a tool to drive change in this economy. What are you working on right now?
So it's really exciting if you see the amount of progress that's taking place from a lot of the new tools in AI. And large language models are really uniquely suited for certain kinds of work. So if you think about education, especially K through 12 education, right now we have 2 generations of failed public school education for a variety of reasons. But if you can actually give kids the opportunity to learn in a way that is appropriate for the way they learn. So if you're a visual learner and we can assess that, test it, and then provide you with a visual learning experience on the core curriculum that you really need to know, AI tools are uniquely suited for doing that. If you're an auditory learner, we can change it. If you look at somebody like Sal Khan at Khan Academy, he's probably the most forward-thinking person in figuring out how to use AI. And one of the things I like about Sal's model is it's not limited to a school. He goes direct to the kid or direct to the family. And so I think you're going to see lots of opportunities to have direct-to-kid opportunities for the way we change how you learn.
For the past 10 years, you've also been very focused on veterans' employment. And when it comes to employment and concerns about employment in this country, there's a lot of concern that AI is going to be taking jobs away and sort of replacing a whole swath of workers. Are you concerned about AI having a negative impact on the workforce?
No, in fact, I think it will be the exact opposite. I think what you'll be able to do, and it goes back to what I just said about K through 12, the way that you do assessment and training will change dramatically. And my employment focus is for veterans. And if you think about the population of veterans today that's able, capable, and unemployed, there's something like 300,000 to 400,000 able, capable, unemployed veterans, all of whom have skill training opportunities for new categories of employment. And so AI, I think, is going to be a really important way for us to train, educate, and develop new skills that are going to be necessary for the economy that aren't necessarily taught in the military.
Well, a nice optimistic note about AI providing jobs instead of taking them away. You have a new venture that you're working on, or I should say a new philanthropic venture you're working on, the Center for Government Accountability. You haven't announced this yet. What is it? Tell us what this new initiative is.
So if you look out over the last, let's say, 15 to 20 years, one of the things that's happened is you've had an increase in corruption in government, municipal government, state government, federal government. But the tools to be able to actually identify things that then give you, in law enforcement, the ability to prosecute those corrupt public officials have actually weakened. And one of the benefits of AI is that you'll be able to do things. I'll give you a great example. FOIA requests, Freedom of Information requests, that are important for your work, or Public Records Act requests. The automation of that process, the ability to actually synthesize all of what you gain in a Freedom of Information Act request or a Public Records Act request can be automated through AI, and you can then provide district attorneys, attorney generals, even the DOJ with access to tools and technology that they won't be able to easily get on their own.
So you're going to be working to provide those tools, and how quickly will that launch?
Well, we want the tools to be robust, so it's going to take some time, but I think, when you look at law enforcement, you look at the district attorneys, attorney generals, they don't have the money to be able to get access to the very best AI talent or the very best custom AI tools, but they need it.
When it comes to the government and accountability, sort of more broadly, you've been pushing for reciprocal trade with China, saying that if they limit the way that video games or social media is distributed in China, you want reciprocal trade agreements for what's happening here in the U.S. The president spoke about this last night. What is your perspective on the reciprocal trade situation now, and what should happen with China, especially given there was a big panel here on China, which Secretary Raimondo spoke on yesterday?
So I think the Secretary has actually been leading the charge on this within the government. But if you think about singling out a single company like ByteDance that's not the most effective way for us to think about trade with China. You know, we have an enormous amount of trade with China, and right now the rules and regulations don't allow U.S. companies to operate without being in a joint venture that's usually owned and controlled by a Chinese company. The government in China will have the choice. You know, for example, Tesla can operate in China on its own. I think if we had a reciprocal trade framework whereby an industry that was required to be in a joint venture in China, that industry, the Chinese companies that participate in that industry, were required to be in joint ventures in the U.S., many of those technology-related industries could have information security requirements, security clearances, but it would give you the opportunity to create hundreds of thousands of jobs, billions of dollars of value, and allow the Chinese company to know that they were operating with a partner that would provide the same information security that they're required to provide for American companies in China.
And so do you feel like the government is moving in that direction, or what's the chance of that happening?
Well, if you think about it, the president last night was largely focused on NATO, but he actually specifically brought up reciprocal trade and the need for this reciprocal trade framework. Leader Schumer has been focused on it. You know, you had a bipartisan committee led by Mike Gallagher that was focused on reciprocal trade. So I actually think you're likely to see it's probably the most bipartisan piece of legislation that's being discussed right now in the government. Yeah,
and speaking of the president, there's a huge focus here on this coming presidential election. Looking big picture at the administration, and you're talking about all the different pieces of this, what kind of administration do you think would be best suited for economic growth and for businesses like the one you recently sold to Microsoft?
Well, you know, you think about the federal government, it's the largest, most complex organization in the world, and, you know, the people who are running it should be the most sophisticated, capable people who know how to run large, complex organizations.
Well, that was a very brief answer. I'm guessing you don't want to be naming any names here.
No, that's not something that I spend a lot of time.
So then I have to ask you a quick question. It was reported that you're interested in buying TikTok. Speaking of ByteDance, are you interested in buying TikTok?
I read that too. I'm more interested in making sure we have a reciprocal trade framework with China.
Yes or no on TikTok? Will we see Bobby Kotick as the future CEO of TikTok down the line?
Right now, you're going to see me focused on making sure we have the reciprocal trade framework in China. And I don't think singling out a single company is a good idea. Okay.